Grizzly bears. What about them? Do we want them? If so, why so? If so, where do we want them? If we want them at all, under what conditions? What can we expect from them? What can they do for us? More to the point, what can they do to us? And what can they expect from us? These are all questions we'll discuss in this presentation. Above all, what can we expect from them and what can they expect from us? For many millenniums, there was a truce of sort between humans and grizzly bears. Native people sought the truce from fear of and respect for the great beasts. After all, they are animals who can kill us, even eat us. That they don't often do so meant that grizzly bears agreed to the truce, or so we thought. However, their agreement was not based on fear of us, but simply because they don't care much one way or the other about us. Why? Who knows? Perhaps because we ran around in loud and obnoxious groups. Perhaps because we stink, or because we keep dogs to warn and protect us, or maybe because we sometimes interfered with a bear's pursuit of luscious berries, or overripe carrion from buffalo driven to their death over cliffs, or animals killed in snow avalanches. Perhaps the beasts found weapons we possessed in earlier times annoying, pinpricks, so to speak, or rocks and clubs, but often coming in droves as we ganged up where danger threatened. Maybe they simply found it easier to avoid us than to fight us. But the obvious truth was primitive men didn't matter much to grizzly bears while they went about the daily chore of finding the kinds of food necessary to put on enough fat to take them through an entire winter's sleep. Nope, in olden times, grizzly bears didn't care a whit, one way or another, about humans. Then came the development of high-powered firearms, and the ground rules between humans and animals changed. Our fear of grizzly bears was tempered by the ability to throw terrifying bullets thousands of feet per second. Thus, bears learned that we were even more disagreeable than before. Automatic high-powered weapons and our custom of hunting in packs gave humans enormous power. With that power, wildlife suffered. The plains bison nearly disappeared. Passenger pigeons did disappear. Even the grizzly bear was driven to the farthest reaches of the lonesomest mountains. There's this about the grizzly, though. He might respect us a little more in today's world than he did when our only weapons was puny bows and spears and clubs and brands of fire, but he never learned to fear us, and he certainly never considered us his master. Still, grizzly numbers fell. They fell not only because we killed them with our Magnum firearms, but because we built shopping malls and housing developments and freeways and airports where the animals once foraged in spring and fall. The great beasts vanished from several states where they once roamed: Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and despite the fact that his picture flies yet on the state's flag, the last grizzly was killed in California nearly a century ago. In all the lower 48 states, healthy grizzly bear numbers roam only in Wyoming and Montana, though remnant populations exist in isolated mountains of Washington and Idaho. Even though grizzly numbers are thought to be stable in Montana, that may be true only because the places they dwell are usually the farthest reaches, amid the highest and wildest mountains, places Montanans still have in abundance. But a funny thing happened all along the way. We began to understand that the grizzly could best be found in the best places. The high lonesome parks, the waterfowl-filled marshes, the scenic mountainsides where wildflowers bloom and huckleberries hang, the kinds of places where we like to breathe deep and ogle scenic vistas or doze away a summer afternoon in peaceful relaxation. Somewhere, sometime, we began to understand that the mighty grizzly bear actually represents those last best places, and if we wanted to keep those last best places for ourselves and our kids' kids, then maybe we ought to keep grizzly bears around to ensure that the places where we live are the finest of all places to live. It was while wandering amid those beautiful places that I saw my first grizzly bear. It was a golden sow with two small cubs, one dark and one golden like its mother. I watched them for hours, trading views through our spotting scope with my wife Jane. Then sometime later, I watched a giant silvertip walk up a wind-thrown tree trunk, passing within 20 feet of a grazing cow elk who, though warily eyeing him, watched the great bear pass without moving anything but her head. Imagine that. Obviously, those two of the wildest of our wild animals had some sort of a natural understanding that escaped me, though I wanted to learn. Over the years, I tried to learn. I've watched many, many grizzly bears doing their thing in wild country and sometimes near civilization. I've learned to consider them to be the ultimate creature in our animal world. Awesome, powerful, like nature's marine band, and every single one of them walks around as if they've nothing left to prove. My love for the outdoors has led me closer to them than I would prefer, always with me unaware of their closeness. Thus far, they've done what we call the right thing, letting me off the hook with only goose pimples and an adrenaline rush, choosing either to avoid or ignore me. They don't avoid or ignore me because I'm big or bad or ugly or too tough to mess with. They avoid or ignore me because they have no time for me and no interest in me. They'd just rather eat huckleberries or dig glacier lily bulbs in a meadow or feed on cattail roots in a swamp and be left alone. For my part, I wish to avoid them, though I'll never ignore them. When I travel in grizzly country, I try to be alert to evidence of a bear's presence. I look for his tracks in mud or snow. I watch for signs that one has been foraging along the same trail I'm following, like cow parsnips that's been ripped from the ground. I watch for huckleberry-filled bear scat, and I sniff for the telltale odors. That means a big male bruin could be close. When I seek opportunities to watch grizzly bears, I always try to spot and view them from a distance through a spotting scope or binoculars. I try to make sure the wind is not drifting from me to them. Preferably, I like to have them in a meadow and me screened from their view by bushes or trees. I even like it best of all, if worst should come to worst, that trees suitable for climbing are close at hand. And both my wife Jane and I carry bear spray. We've carried bear spray for the last dozen years. Though we've never used it, we think of the pepper spray as our last line of defense, one that's only to be used if our efforts to stay alert, detect the bear's presence, and practice avoidance has failed. Why not a gun? For two reasons. One, in a sudden wild melee, it's not essential to be as accurate with bear spray as you must be with a firearm. Guns require pinpoint accuracy in order to deter an angry grizzly bear, whereas a pepper spray requires only a cloud between you and the bear. Two, there's a better chance both you and the bear will live if the spray is used as a deterrent versus a firearm. Frankly, I would not care to live in a land where there were no grizzly bears. Knowing that the great beasts only live in the best places, those are also the places where I like to live, roam, breathe, and yes, have my ashes scattered after I've gone to that even greater Valhalla in the sky. While I'm here on earth, I want to know that I share my land with all God's creatures, from mountain bluebirds to golden grizzly bears. In order to ensure the bears and I coexist in the same places at the same time, teaching others about the magnificent animals and how we can live together is my best way. Humans need to know that homeowners are pointing cameras out their living room windows at grizzly sows and her cubs eating lawn clover. They need to know about a grizzly bear who swam Flathead Lake to, what? Apparently to get to the other side. They need to know about a giant grizzly bear who chose 2 days' worth of sleeping quarters within a couple hundred yards of the Big Fork Dairy Queen, and nobody was ever the wiser. We all need to know most bears are already trying to get along with us, just as most humans would like to get along with them. Our challenge is to educate the rest, bears and people, to go along in order to get along. That's the reason for this program. It's also the reason I wrote the book Learning to Talk Bear, why I've written lots of magazine articles and newspaper columns, as well as delivered lots of radio programs about grizzly bears. Remember the question we posed at the beginning? What can we expect from grizzly bears? What can grizzly bears expect from us? Tell your brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors about this program. Take the flyer about the grizzly home and read it. Talk about this program with Mom and Dad. Talk about it with your school teachers, and best of all, remember that Montana school kids elected the grizzly bear to become the state animal, then followed their bill through the legislature to make it law. Montanans, you see, always thought grizzly bears should roam the treasure state. Let's continue.